Next guest is one of Westward's 100 creatives, founder and artistic director of the Catamounts and director of the upcoming first ever immersive musical for Off Center at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. So please welcome Amanda Berg Wilson.
Knew a man Bojangles and he danced for you.
So I feel like you do a million different things.
Me too.
Yeah. So let's start with the Catamounts.
Yes.
Who are the Catamounts?
So the Catamounts are a Boulder-based theater company, and we call what we do theater for the adventurous palate, for a couple of reasons. First of all, because we bring work to Colorado that's never been done here before.
Yep.
And the nature of the work is that it is on some level, groundbreaking, boundary pushing, incorporating other art forms.
Yes.
So on some level, it's adventurous.
Yes.
It's going where other theater companies may not dare to go. And then the other reason is that the reason why palette is in there is because part of our signature is that we, on Saturday nights, also extend the experience of the show through a post-show, what we call community meal. Okay. And at it, we serve a curated menu that's entirely based on the show itself, cool. And a special release beer from a brewery in Boulder called Wildwoods, whom I sit down with just like anybody would sit down with a designer, and they design a beer based on the themes of the show. Yeah,
so this is not just a show you're seeing, this is a full experience you are getting.
It's a full experience. And you know, we, as a Boulder-based company, we really wanted to meet our populace, the citizens of Boulder where they are, and they are really into their food and drink. And so we thought, you know, and so are we. Yeah. And so we thought, we'll make that part of the experience.
Bring it all together. Perfect. Yeah. I love it. And you are not originally from Colorado.
I'm not. I sort of have lived all over. I grew up in Texas. My folks actually moved here when I was 16 years old, which is a really terrible time to move, but I mustered through. Went away to school, lived in Chicago for a decade, which is actually really where my aesthetic was kind of honed, and part of why I founded the Catamounts is I really fell in love with this kind of rule-breaking type of theater that they do out there, and I wanted to bring it to Colorado.
Said Colorado doesn't have that, let me give it to them.
That is what I thought. I thought Colorado has a lot of really great theater, but nobody's doing this kind of work, so I'm going to start doing it.
And you just announced the 2018 season.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that. What's coming up?
So we, in September, so our season is a sort of a school year season. It starts in September. And we'll be doing the regional premiere of You on the Moors Now by Jacqueline Backhouse. It is a mashup of Pride and Prejudice, Wuthering Heights, Little Women, and Jane Eyre. Yeah. And it takes the heroines from those four novels and kind of throws them into the same world together. And it begins right in the moment where they've all rejected their suitors. So it's this comic, wild, feminist romp that takes these iconic characters and sort of looks at what it means to be a modern woman when you were, you know, like I was, a little girl whose first notions of relationships between the sexes started with these 19th century novels.
Exactly. And also, you're just coming off of, correct me if I'm wrong, 11 Henry nominations?
Yeah, 9.
9 Henry nominations.
Henry nominations.
I wanted to give you more, apparently, in my mind.
That's okay.
For, and I can't, Beowulf?
Beowulf, 1,000 Years of Baggage.
1,000 Years of Baggage. So what's it like, you know, getting 9 nominations? That's a lot for one musical to get. And then going into the season, does that give you more of a desire to go on?
Yeah, you know, that's such a great question. I mean, I definitely think that, you know, and when you're a small company like ours and you're sort of slowly cultivating your audience, and you're, especially when you're doing this kind of work that is not necessarily the traditional kind of work, and so you're having to find audience members who are not traditional theater goers for the most part. You know, we have always believed in what we're doing. But to have it, you know, recognized as being successful in a larger forum is incredibly, you know, validating. But the great thing is that, you know, we're gonna do it regardless.
Yes.
So
if people like it or not, we're gonna do it.
I mean, you know, there was no audience, you know. I mean, I would hope that somebody would like come and have a talk with me and be like, you know, nobody is coming, but people are coming, and you know, I don't know. I guess I'm just at the point where I feel like there's a lot of companies in town that do traditional work quite well. And I really don't think that there's a reason for existing unless you have a really strong aesthetic and mission. And so I'm committed to that. But it's nice when it lands.
Exactly.
Although, you know, it's so funny. Stephen Berg said, you know, that night, like, oh, it's so weird. And I wanted to be like, oh, it could be a lot weirder.
You haven't seen anything yet.
I haven't seen anything yet. Yeah, no, but, you know, and I really love this piece. And it's nice when we can find pieces. We have this big joke in the company about Vice, not Vice, and which was what the Miami Vice writers used to say in the you're too young to remember Miami Vice. But so we sort of know what a Catamounts piece is when we see it, and this You on the Moors Now is like it's Trey Catamounts.
It's Trey Catamounts.
Yeah,
like
and so is Beowulf. So it's nice to kind of have two shows back to back that feel really emblematic of the kind of work we're trying to do.
And you have a big deal coming up. I think it's a perfect transition from the Catamounts to what you're doing at the Denver Center now with Off Center, The Wild Party, their first immersive musical. So just briefly talk about what is an immersive musical, what is The Wild Party?
Well, you know, the whole concept of immersive is, I think, right now very in vogue and sort of defined on different levels. Like, you know, for some people, it just means that you're not sitting in a proscenium audience configuration, which to me, it doesn't really go far enough. And I think what Off Center is doing so well is really trying to make that term super meaningful for the audience. And I think immersive, in the case of, you know, Sweet and Lucky, which Off Center did last season, which I was in, and then with what we're trying to do with the Wild Party is just really make it so that the audience is part of the show, is that without the audience, the show just doesn't actually move forward. So they are tasked and engaged and implicated even in the action of the piece.
What is The Wild Party?
So The Wild Party is a 2001 musical. The book was written by George C. Wolfe and the music by, and I always say his name wrong, but Michael Lechusa. And it was on Broadway, produced by the Public, with Toni Collette and Mandy Patinkin in the lead roles. It's based on a 1928 poem that was actually so scandalous at the time that it wasn't, that it was like its publication was banned. But it's about some vaudeville performers, and specifically this vaudeville couple who are sort of in this itchy part of their relationship. And so to kind of shake things up, they decide to have a real wild party.
Perfect.
And so then basically what happens over the course of the night is what happens when you go to a really wild party, and for the audience as well.
Yeah, so talk about the audience. So they come in, and they're not just sitting in a seat. So what is like their involvement?
Well, I some of it I don't want to give away because I think that part of the thrill of immersive work is that some of it is a surprise.
Yes.
But I will say that the audience and our production are the guests at the party.
Okay.
And they will not just be sitting watching the action unfold and the party unfold around them. There will actually be lots of moments in the piece where they are really doing things that you do at a party. Everything legally that you can do at a party.
You're going to put them in the show.
Yeah, there will be no illegal drugs, though there are in the poem, but you will not get to do illegal drugs.
I think that'd be good. That'd be good.
Probably.
And my last question for you is, what is it like directing this kind of a musical? I mean, there's so many things to worry about when directing, but I feel like so much more when
there's so many more. It's definitely, you know, I keep saying to folks that I think it's so awesome that Off Center is taking it on, because it really is an experiment.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a piece that was written to be performed in a proscenium house, and it's linear, right?
Yeah.
It sort of starts, although I will say that I think part of what, it wasn't a giant success on Broadway, and I think part of it is because you were like, there's a wild party happening in front of me, and I am not actually in it. But in terms of directing it, it just means that I am not thinking about just what's happening in a particular musical number.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about what's happening in the musical number and then what is happening in
Around
like
it, yeah.
8 or 9 different other locations.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's probably my own particular, brand of psychosis, but the more sort of massive and ambitious something is, the more I'm like, this is what we're going to do.
The bigger it is, the better it is
for you. The bigger it is, the better it
Exactly.
is. So I'm
Yeah.
super excited about the challenge.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
so
on. Yeah, it was a
much.
blast having you, and I'll let you
Yeah.
get back to all your million things you got to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, perfect. We'll stick around. We'll be right back with a lot more.
In worn-out shoes, with silver hair, a ragged shirt, and baggy pants.